I'm Miles. I got the chance to talk to Allie Rougeot, climate justice activist in the Fridays for Future movement, as well as one of Corporate Night's top 30 under 30 sustainability leaders of 2019, about her work. Here's our conversation. My first question for you is, from your own personal experience in leadership and making change, what do you think people most widely recognize you for?
In terms of specific events, or in terms of more like ways of organizing? I guess maybe both.
Maybe both.
In terms of specific events, I think obviously in general my coordination of the Fridays for Future Toronto chapter in the past year, and maybe more specifically the two most recent larger strikes, so September 27th, November 29th. I think in terms of skills or of personality, I think I usually just see myself as like high energy and very like kind of like hopefully the spark or something that kind of like gives energy and impulse to other people's like ideas or willingness to do something. A lot of the times people are willing to do things, they don't know where to start, or they don't know if they're alone in it. And so usually I think what people come to me for is usually just that I like have the energy, that I like have the passion, and it's easy for other people to kind of like join that energy. I think.
And if you had to really put a finger on who you consider your people to be, without putting a name on those people, who are they?
I look up or look at the work of a lot of people, be it usually I find it more in either like Indigenous communities or communities of color that have kind of like built the tradition of like resisting and like just in every part of their life being an activist. And so it's not just having a job that's in social work or things like that. It's really people that in everything they do are trying to be active and make change through consumption, through, you know, like the choices of like clothing you wear, things like that, or like to try to like represent your culture, all of these things. So I'm really like at the same time impressed and hopefully part of that group of people that believes like activism can just be a way of life, and not just like a hobby or a part of your job, because it should feel like a whole of you is resisting. And I've seen that more in communities of color and Indigenous people, probably because like their very existence is for some people like a form of resistance, sadly. So maybe that's why we still see like that behavior more in them.
And why exactly do you consider these to be your people?
For me, it's really that. It's the notion that the different fights we're leading, which are all very interconnected, have to come from like within us, and we have to like feel this, compared to maybe people, and especially in other sectors that would do things because they believe these things look good, and so then you know that these people don't embody the whole change. They're just acting on it at a surface level. So I would want to be part of these people that I'm describing. I hope that I am. Like, I can't tell. I want to be, just because I think like when you truly believe in it, in whatever change you're going for, you have to like kind of like act on it with your whole self. It comes from like the heart and everything, as well as the mind. And I think it's that. And I think it's also like maybe people that recognize that like the road to the change you want is long, and so it's good to like make sure you find like yourself in it fully, and that you don't do it as like a task that you have to do every day, because otherwise it's really hard to like keep going, you know.
What characteristics or activities would they see to be able to say, oh, those are Allie's people?
I mean, I think if we look from like a cause point of view, a lot of people associate me very strongly with the climate movement. Of course, I think also maybe the kind of people that like still want to maintain a lot of hope, and kind of like, I don't want to say a positive message, but an optimistic message. I'm trying to think as well. I think It's not easy. I don't think about these things as often as I should, maybe. But I do think it's that. It's like both the human rights. The other day I was attending an event, and it was a bunch of people that I guess you would consider like my people because we were all like invited in the same place for one thing. But none of us had the same like cause that we were going for, and none of us had the same occupation. A lot of people were like artists, in governments, in like even the private sector. But I think all of us had like that, like a mix of like energy, rage, belief in like human rights, and like really, really like commitment to changing things. I think those would be the correct like characteristics.
I want to get a sense of what you consider to be your one or two core personal values that on a day-to-day basis you can truthfully say that you at least try to live by.
I think one of them I try to sum it up by saying courage, but it's like not like just courage of like being like bold, but kind of courage. I think it takes courage to have to like think every day about the climate crisis and not be desperate. Courage to also be like, am I doing things wrong in the situation? And especially because maybe, as you know, like in the climate movement, we also have to think a lot about like race and injustices and other things that come into it. So like kind of courage of like, okay, let's hear about these harder topics. Also courage to just like constantly stand up and like not know the answers sometimes. You know, like I'm denouncing a system and sometimes I don't know what the best system is. So I think that might be one that like I think I have, and maybe it's the reason why other people want to work with me is because I think I'm okay to like look at my behavior and be like, is this the right thing to do? Like I think I have that. I know. I think the other one is just really like I want to say energy more than passion, because I don't think it's out of passion. I think I'm doing this out of like necessity, but I think it's this. I think because I'm like very maybe motivated, energetic. It's something along those lines of like impulse that I was mentioning before, and that brings along others. So if you're someone that wants to make change, you showing a lot of enthusiasm and impulse makes others want to join your fight. Makes them feel like it's something worth fighting for.
I want to get a sense of what you think motivates you to act on those values.
Yeah, it's something I ask myself a lot. Like, why am I doing this? And obviously, like with climate change, I'm doing this because, for example, like I'd love to have kids one day, but if we're still on the line we're on and the degrees of warming we're predicting, I won't, because I don't think it's fair to put someone in that situation. So I'm doing it for like those reasons of like my life is gonna get affected, but more, I think, because I know how lucky I was as a kid growing up. I grew up surrounded by nature. I grew up like privileged, and like I'm thinking I'm probably in one of the best positions to act on it because I have the time to do it. I have the knowledge to do it. So like if I don't do it, I think I'd be like kind of misusing my privilege, my education, my like the fact that I grew up surrounded by nature, and so I was able to like learn how to like love it. So I think it's that, and I think maybe one of the first like kind of fights I was involved in was around Syrian refugees in south of France, and seeing the absolute like horror of refugees coming on our shores, and the life they had to go through. The climate crisis is going to create that like 1,000 times worse. And so I think like these images maybe in my mind of like what we had are kind of like what keeps me going, thinking like I still have the capacity of preventing future harm. Why would I not? Like, how could I not?
How would someone else know that these were your values without you telling them?
Hopefully, I think through the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, and so that it's not just like, oh, everybody's kind of talking about climate, let me do it. Since I was 10, you can there's like things about like presentations I did in class about the environment and then people and things like that. So hopefully the fact that I've been in it for a long time, the fact that it's kind of a common theme in terms of what I do as well. So in the way I consume, that. It's definitely the long-term involvement. The fact that I talk about them not about the values themselves, but about like the the results of these, like the climate crisis, other crises. In my everyday life with friends, stuff like that, I try to associate with people that also live these things. So hopefully, it just feels like it's my whole person. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think it's just like embodying them. And I guess without like me naming these specific things, whenever I talk, these are things that always come back. Like I think if you looked at every time I talk, you could probably like sum it up to these things that I said, just like human rights and the privilege that I have to like use well.
I want to get a sense of where you see the world being this time next year, as well as the role you see yourself playing in the future you want to create in the world.
There's so much can change in a year. I mean, we've seen so much from like people rising in the past few months, um, like Hong Kong, Bolivia, Lebanon, to like the impeachment that happened yesterday. So we can't. I don't know that I can predict. What I see is more uprising of people everywhere, and including in Canada, and that's something that I want to be part of. Is continuing to have strikes, bigger strikes that have like broader reach with more labor, more of the people in healthcare and education that join, to really like kind of fight back on this system that disregards people and so it disregards the planet. I think we're going to be seeing maybe a lot of like difficult conversations in Canada, especially. We're going to have to like work with Alberta so that Alberta doesn't feel like we're neglecting them while talking about the climate crisis. So I think there's going to be, this time next year, hopefully we're not going to face, but we could be facing like Alberta feeling very strongly about not being part of Canada. And, like, I know these things came as a bit of a joke originally on Twitter, but that feeling is really real for people in Canada. And where I see myself in this is I want to, right now, my like big thing is empowering other people to step up. So with others, I'm trying to create like networks of high schoolers that are going to be like the people mobilizing their schools and doing the work I do, but in their schools. And then we're trying to like build capacity for universities to also like be more active. And I always talk about like organized outrage, if that makes sense, is that we're allowed to be angry, but we have to organize in like a resilient system, so that if this time next year, no good climate action has been taken, we have the capacity to like continue striking because it's hard to continue movements. So yeah, I think that's the big role that I'm hoping to play is like get more and more people to like be in the fight for us in the long run and not just like one time they strike and then they forget about it.
The term organized outrage, I would love for you to elaborate on your experience with that.
Yeah, I think I used that word, and I really don't know if it's a word that makes sense, but like it came to me one day, because it's like a lot of us are either like outraged or terrified or both, and like I don't know, I was paralyzed for a while. I know a lot of people don't know what to do, and so it's so important. The first step is like recognizing that you are, like recognizing that you're angry, stuff like that, figuring out what you can do. But then the greatest thing is about organizing. Is that you don't all of a sudden you can share a burden, and like when I get to meet other people that like we organize strikes with, not only do I share the burden of like who's gonna be taking care of the peace marshals and the police permit blah blah, but also like it's a time where we can also share like the rage, the fear. Yesterday I was at a meeting with a bunch of people that organize in like social justice more, and they were saying like there's so much rage in the community, but sometimes it can be destructive. Sometimes it ends up like building people against each other, things like that. So it's so important to like be able to channel that rage or the climate anxiety into something. Very concretely, honestly, like it's maybe realizing that when you feel like there's something in you that's angry at a news you hear, a documentary we watch, like think of that as like a flame, like power. You're like, wow, like my body is actually reacting to something. Like that's how wrong it is. What can I do with it realistically? Who can I share this with? Because also it's emotional. So like, who is gonna be interested in hearing that emotion? I think it should really like if people are like listening to this or reading anything about this and thinking like, what do I do when I feel that? Like, I would say like be happy that you feel that. That means you're like you're connected enough to the issue that you feel something.
Just wondering where you see yourself on a personal level in 5 years' time.
I think I'm going to be graduating university, I don't know, hopefully at the end of next year, probably. And after that, it's the big question. Like, I want to continue education, but I also want to make sure I have a world after that education. And so I think I might take time between my undergrad and my grad school. A lot of people are telling me like I should go into things like, law and things like that to be human rights lawyer, environmental lawyer. Why not? Maybe that's not the place I'll go. I don't see myself going into like government, for example. So that's like I think I know where I like don't see myself. I think that's not where I should be. But I think definitely it will still be super, super connected to the climate crisis and more maybe in general, like things around democracy, making sure people have power and not companies or small groups of people. And I mean, I cannot even tell you if I'll be in Canada or not, but I do hope I will because I only moved here 3 years ago and I've really grown to love this country and I want to keep going and make it, hopefully better too. But yeah, I think I know that I'll be in similar domains. I'll have to be working at that time, so we'll see how I manage to like reconcile these two because I know it's a dilemma for a lot of people. That's kind of like I know that I'll still be speaking about these things for sure.
What do you see as being the most effective activities to bridging the gap between standing up for what you believe to be not right, and then going from there to work towards figuring out what is the right thing?
The first step is always okay. What's wrong? Let's point out what's wrong and let's say it. We're allowed to, even if you don't have the solutions. But then, realistically, if we do want change, even though we don't have to provide the policy solutions, we should be because we want our policy solutions to be listened to. It's just I guess it's better if we promote them. I think to me one of the big ones is going to be around like democracy. I think the climate crisis happened because of like a lot of corporate greed and like profit centered things, and I think as long as we don't leave from that, as long as we also don't have a big maybe cultural shift, and we don't like go back to we're only human, which means we're part of nature. We are nature. Also, all humans are equal, and like I think for now we still have when we oppress against other people and when we oppress against nature, it's the same logic. It's like some of us are better than others, so we're gonna have to have a huge cultural shift. So I think that's where, like for example, education has a huge role. I see like a lot of things being done through education. So this next generation goes through that. A lot of things throughout making our democracies actually representative, limiting a lot how much corporations have a say in our democracy because, once again, impossible to reconcile the two otherwise. Going back in Canada, we are so lucky that we have Indigenous people that know how to take care of this land. So, like, let's have the humility of like listening to their traditional knowledge and also the courage to like uh, you know uh, reestablish a relationship with them through like the obvious like reparations we need and all the things to like bridge the gap we created. yeah, I think for Canada at least, I really see it through those lenses, like democracy, education, and the cultural shift that could be based on Indigenous knowledge, for example. And then youth empowerment, like the youth, as you said, have so many ideas. We're still capable of thinking outside the box because we haven't been in a system. Our minds are still like fresh and happy, and like let's honor that instead of trying to put kids directly into like what's the job you can get with this education. Like let's think like what are the new ideas you can come up with. So yeah, that's where I hope to see things go.
And I'm wondering if there's any content that you've taken in, whether it be like a book or a podcast, anything that you consider to be truly pivotal in the way you go about your life, really.
I've seen a few like bits and pieces. I could find again all the names, but like for example, one of my professors from last year wrote a book that was about um, like it's called like it's just like the regenerative like idea of human activity where like not only are we trying to be sustainable but we're trying to like contribute to the earth, like the earth contributes to all the systems, you know how like all animals contribute to each other's life, things like that.
Right.
We've kind of lost that, we just extract from it. So that's one of the things that like kind of really changed my way of thinking. All right, we don't just want to be like sustainable or like okay with each other. Like I want to bring something more to other people that I meet, and hopefully they'll give that back too. So like I think that book, I could find it, was very like instrumental in that. I'm trying to think. I think younger it was more specific like case studies because I always reading stories that like Amnesty would put up, Amnesty International, and it was always like this amazing like reporter is getting arrested because of that. So I think it was like much more these like case studies of like people who keep standing up, that like ingrained in my head that one person can like actually change so much, you know. So I think just all these like thousands of people around the world that constantly stand up for what's right, just reading their stories really changed everything. One of them it was probably like the story of like Malala, but not only all of these case studies of men and women really of all ages also, which is impressive, standing up.
Right.
I think that's how I can pinpoint. A lot of it has also been like built over the years and over like interactions with people. I think I like how do you say, like I feel a lot of other people's energy. So like when people are super enthusiastic about one thing, I'll get concerned about it and then get super enthusiastic about it as well. So that's also how he's kind of like built to like my activism, I think.